Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. It's May 10th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And quick look at our daily chart with the envelope bands. You can see we're still bouncing off that midline, just kind of going sideways. We traded way up today, sold off, and you can see the market just clicked open at 5 o'clock right there. We even sold way down and recovered considerably. So it was a really mixed trading day. There was a big trend down, then we recovered a good bit of it before the day was over. So it was a difficult trading day, really. It was There was a big trend down, but that big trend down had such strong rallies out of it. You had to be really really careful today. Um, lots of volume back. We had these two low volume days. Lots of volume, lots of volatility today. Um, but let's flip over there and take a look at it. You can see what it looks like on the 2,000 tick chart. And we'll go through the trades and we'll wrap this day up. But let's flip over to the 2,000 tick chart and take a look. Okay, we had three different CPI numbers that came out at 7:30 this morning. That was the news we talked about yesterday, and you can see how greatly that affected. We rallied strongly, took it all back pretty quickly, and continued to trend lower, only to get a break of this channel, move to a new low, and then we rallied strongly back before the day was over. So, um, very different looking day, kind of an interesting looking day. I mean, you could argue in the big picture that this was a range day because we really traded the entire day inside the overnight highs and lows. And you can see that there. We'll just color this to give it a little color so it's a little easier to see. Mm, just trying to let's give it a little this color. And you can see that. Um, we bounced a lot of times at that midline right there. So it wouldn't have hurt to have this on your chart. And of course, when you made the failed break lower, but there was a break of the channel and a new low. So once this would have been considered a failed break lower, and there's that important low of the day. That if you can catch that, this was really difficult to try to trade down here. I looked at this, and I mean, see if you'd tried to get long on that first bar, it broke higher, and then it would have stopped you out, and it could have done the same thing again. So it's really dangerous. So you need a really good signal bar, and I don't think any of those really qualify. Even here, you had a break and a new low. By here, you had a break and you would have got a scalp out of that. But there's always a chance you get stopped out of it. So you got to be real careful. And once this thing starts rallying, I mean, this is a spike in channel, very strong, and you just don't get a lot of opportunities to enter that. Uh, but once again, as I'm always saying, if you can catch those failed break lowers, if you catch the right point, man, they pay off big time. But a lot of times you'll get burned. And so you really need to be very careful trying to do that. You need a really good setup, and we just didn't get one this time. You don't get a high or low, you don't get a reversal, you don't get anything like that. It just reverses and takes off and never looks back. And it's great to catch those, but sometimes they're just difficult to catch. And when you're trading higher this strongly, and then suddenly you're going even stronger to the downside, and then suddenly you're going stronger to the upside. So even though this is a downtrend, this is very mixed trading. You could trade it both ways if you get a good setup. So keep that in mind. But really, in the big picture, we traded inside the overnight highs and lows, except for this failed break lower around lunchtime, and we rallied all the way back up. It's kind of odd because this chart, something looks kind of odd on this because I guess that's yeah, I guess that's probably right. We opened here, so this would be stem down here, and then we closed here, so that would be stem up there. So yeah, I guess that looks right. For some reason, this didn't feel like it matched the daily chart, but I think it does. It just you have to think about where we opened versus where we closed, and we did open. Actually, we opened up here, closed here, so that would give us a good bit of stem. Yeah, that's still probably right. It'd give you a. It just doesn't seem like there's enough room up top for. Let's go back and look at that chart again. Okay, yeah, it looks like we ought to have closed higher here. That looks about right to the downside. But that looks like a lot more stem. It looks like we closed much. What does this close say here? Let me just, what does this say we closed at? It says we closed at 41.52 3/4. Let's go over and look. And yeah, there it is, 41.52 3/4. It just looks totally different on this chart than it does the other one. But I'm guessing that's right. It's just I'm not able to visualize it for some reason. It just seems off to me. But either way, there it is. And let's zoom in here and go through these trades. You had to be patient today because we didn't really get a good setup till almost 9:30. Of course, you probably didn't even want to start trading till after 7:30 because we had this CPI news and there was 3 different pieces of it. So you wanted to be flat going into that, and you can see what happened. It really rocketed up, and the next thing you know, we're just flat again. No real way to get long or short either one in there, and then we're running up, and then finally you get this second entry long right here. We're a good bit away from the EMA, but it's clear that trend line's in play. So maybe you take that trade. And then we run up, and then we finally get a break and chop sideways a minute before we run to a new high, and it sells off. Again, there's that failed breakout. Generally, you want to wait on a lower high or a second entry or something. That is a second entry if you're counting from here. And that is a new low, so it's a first entry, second entry. So for that reason, I at least marked it green. But generally, you're better off to wait till you get a lower high here, or just to prove we're not going to push higher one more time. But clearly, we got to close outside and a couple of legs up. So maybe you take that trade. And then, of course, we get a break here, move to a new low, and then it reverses. That's too congested to try to get long. And then notice we run up here and make this high, and then we try to go higher once, twice. So when it breaks lower there, that's a failure. So maybe you trade that as a failure. This really looks sideways here. There's still a leg down there. You can clearly see enough bars to call that a leg with a first entry and then another leg, second entry. So I like that one. I marked it green. Failures are very advanced anyway. They're not for most of you. That's for traders that are profitable and been trading a while, and they're very skilled chart readers. So for most of you, you wouldn't take these failures. But that is a reversal failure, and you would look for at least a minimum of a measured leg, which is going to give you something like that. So you got a long way to go here from here, but this thing just keeps going. And if you catch this, yeah, you get a runner on this. And that's the kind of runners you like to get. You know, if you probably wouldn't have definitely exited till way down here, so you're looking at almost $1,000 there on a single contract. And that's where that's a math changer right there. That changes your math considerably. So, but anyway, you get a first entry, and then it breaks higher again and turns down. So that's a second entry short, but I'm hesitant to mark that or take that, even though you're expecting a retest of the low here, because that's the first close outside that channel. We're not quite back to the EMA, so it's a little bit early. It looks a little congested, and then not only that, it doesn't break lower. When this bar closes, it gives you an inside bar. I definitely wouldn't trade that on the engulfing bar. But when this closes, you know, maybe you think about it if it breaks below that red bar, but it doesn't, and then you get the inside bar before it breaks. I think it's too, by that time you got to sit tight. And of course, what does it do? It runs straight down, makes a new low, and then we try to go lower 3 times there. So that's a triple test, and you get this little bitty, I think it's 4 ticks. Yeah, 4 ticks. Um, there's not a lot of room back there, but we're probably at least going to go back to the EMA, and there is plenty of room back to the EMA. And we could be going higher now. We could make another measured leg up like this leg right here, because this is about a 50% correction, maybe a little bit more. So we could go higher. And sure enough, it does. It takes off. And so that triple test right there, I marked it green because it's a little bit aggressive, but this is real close to being blue. If there was a little more room in this range, in this congestion area here to the highs, I'd probably say, and maybe you could even mark it here, give you a little more room, but I still don't, actually it needs to be a little lower than that. There you go. It still doesn't quite give you room to get out there. Back to here, but you would expect prices to push on through. Even if they close back like they did, you would expect them to push up and hit that EMA. We've been away from it far too long. So on a triple test, you probably get a scalp out of it. So just, but it's a little aggressive, so I'm gonna leave it green. There's a higher low here, but with those 2 bar matching high, I'd want to see a failure or something, and you just don't get it. It just takes off. And look how strong that is, man. There's a lot of momentum right there. It runs all the way back up and makes a high right here. It gives you a lower high. I didn't mark that lower high. I mean, there's a close outside the new high, but that's not a convincing close outside. This thing could have pushed up again. Maybe you take that one. I didn't mark it green, but it's probably fit to be marked green. It's a lower high way away from the EMA, so we're overdue to come back, but that's some strong momentum, and you got to be careful trying to pick a short on that. You just do. If it turns, you might get another quick move down, which you do. It takes a minute, but so you don't want to miss out on that, especially when it's been running up, up, down. So you want to try to catch those, but you got to be real careful because if your timing is off, the key with these things is timing. You can get the idea right, knowing you're going to go short, but your timing can be off and you can get stopped out. So you not only got to understand the direction, you got to hit the timing just right. I mean, it's a fairly bearish bar. If it was maybe even more bearish, maybe you make that red, but like that, I think you got to sit on it. And then you get a second entry here. Notice this new low, and you get a first entry, second entry, but the signal bar is not very good, and so you can't take it. And then actually off this high, which that's a new high because we made a high here and turned down and then went back up. So that's a new high. So then you try to go higher once, twice. So if it breaks lower there, that's a failure. But it's just so much sideways stuff there. It's not really wanting to sell off. Again, you could probably argue for it to be green. And if you took that, I probably wouldn't, if you understand reversals and you're fairly skilled, I wouldn't beat you up if you took that trade. I'd probably say it's a good read. It's a little aggressive. So runs down, then we bounce, get a break, couple legs up, and a second entry short, and that does confirm that key entry point. I like that trade going short. It doesn't go very far. You would have got a scalp, and then it comes back once, and then it comes back twice, and so now you got a triple test. If it breaks below that, we could go much lower, and now you got a again, this I wouldn't necessarily say this for sure. This is a convincing close outside the trend line, so you may not even treat that as a close outside, although I believe it is. But that runs on down. Then you try to go higher once, twice, and then you also got a second entry short. On the second entry short alone, there's just not room to scalp out there, and you got some more support over here. So it's you're kind of going short into a double bottom there if you go short. But the fact that there's a trap too, I guarantee there's some longs that tried to sneak in here early here. And so if it turns down, they're going to be trapped, and you'll get at least a scalp out of that, and it could keep going. And you can see how easy it dropped and fast it dropped down. So that shows you it was a trap there. And you get a little correction, and off it goes again. Probably trap some more longs right in here. But so maybe you take that trade. I don't think you can enter here. It's just a first entry, and we're not anywhere near any of the key entry points. But it runs down here, bounces, and then you just get a first entry. And then finally you get a second entry here. I didn't mark this one either because this is definitely your signal bar. It's definitely bearish enough. There's definitely enough room here, but maybe you've already had a break in a new low, and this could be a place you would get trapped. Again, if you took it, it is a second entry, so maybe you think about it, but I just wasn't crazy about it. You get a lower high here, but it's definitely too congested. You can see that support, and it actually breaks lower and fails. This is the one I'd try to catch on the second entry long, because we should have went lower off that second entry, and when we didn't, that tells you something's wrong there. Uh, Otherwise, we should have went on down another and made a new low here. Uh, but instead, it reverses. The key is, do you have enough room back to the EMA here? Just make sure you do, probably. And of course, it runs up, pulls back, and then you get a second leg up, pulls back. So that's a failure right there. If it breaks above this bar right here, that's a failed second entry short. And so I like that one. And off it goes again. And then you get a first entry, and then it pulls back. It break above, that's a second entry. Again, there's not much room there. We've already had a break in new high. We're not quite back to the trend line. And you could also you also could say, hey, we got another little trend up right here. We'll probably get this is the first break. We may get a new high. I mean, there's some reasons to consider it going higher. And this is a repeat pattern. I don't know where the other one was over here. We might have seen it more than once, but I know I saw it at least once. There it is right there. I was thinking I saw it twice, but I know I just showed you it's there at least once. It's kind of a repeat pattern. So maybe take that trade. And of course you get the failure. Notice the new low, first entry, second entry. So that's a failed second entry short. If it breaks, there's plenty of room back to the highs there. Just in case it only runs to the high and turns down. But I like that trade. It's a true reversal here going on higher. More of a continuation pattern, really. It's kind of a combination of both because we are still reversing here. And then, of course, here's that repeat second entry. I just talked about it. And then we try to go higher 3 times here. If that would have been a little more bearish, I'd say take that short all day. But it's not. And then, of course, you get a lower high here, but man, does that look congested. That's scary for me. Wait and see if you get a reversal, which you do right here. It actually triggered 1 tick below this bar, so that's where your sell stop would go if you're going to try to trade that. And then, of course, your safety would go 1 tick above the signal bar, which makes the highest point, so that would go above here. So this is a little convoluted because technically this is the trigger bar and the signal bar, but the signal bar you always have to put your stop above the highest point of the swing, which is this one. So your safety stop has to go above that bar. That's a pretty good move down. And then we get the break. First entry, then second entry. And again, look how congested. If you push this all the way over, that's clearly sideways range. So I wouldn't take it. And you can see what happened if you did. And then you get a failed breakout. Then you get your lower high with plenty of room back. That's the perfect place to enter. And you might have considered entering here on the failed breakout. It's a possibility. But see if you get a lower high. And then you get a failed second entry long. But I wouldn't trade any of that. And this thing just kind of drops down, goes sideways, drops down. There's a lower high right here. Technically, you could call that a second entry, but there's a triple bottom there, and it's just not a good place to go short. Then it turns up here. We can't even get back to the EMA, so if it breaks lower, we could be going lower, but the problem is if you were looking at this possible overnight low here, you got to be careful with that. So I just don't see anything. I just don't think that's worth going short right into that. it ends up pushing right on through, and you get a trend up, close outside, tries to move to a new high, and you get a lower high here with a big bearish bar. Plenty of room to the lows. I like taking that one. And of course we bounce. And we talked about this earlier. This is, if you saw, this is a failed break lower, but you've also got a break here and a new low. And that far away from the EMA, maybe prices run back. It's really aggressive. It's not a great setup. So I'll leave it at that. And you just don't get another chance to enter. But it's getting to be pretty obvious this is a strong trend. When it comes back right here and confirms the trend line on a second entry, maybe take that trade. Normally I'd tell you the reason this one's green, notice that we got an inside bar here, but I think it's only, what, 4 ticks, 5 ticks. It is a second entry. This is a fairly strong trend. That's very low risk. So maybe you take that trade. Technically, you'd be better off to see if you get a higher low from here after that second entry, and you do right here. So if it breaks above that, that's probably the better place to go long. And then it bounces again off the trend line, comes back and bounces again off the trend line. This is starting to look like a really strong trend. So at this point, any decent signal bar that comes back and reverses off the trend line, it's usually worth taking. So there's another one. I'll mark those green because it's a little more advanced. It's a little, you need to be a really good chart reader for that. And of course that takes us into the 2:30 hour, and then the volume kind of dries up again. So, but we had some volume in here during the day. So a lot of mixed trading there. Even though there's a trend down in this blue channel, it's very mixed. Strong down, strong up, strong down, strong up, strong down, and then boom, it rallied hard late in the evening. Or really just after lunch. So, interesting day. For so much price movement, there's not a lot of real clear, easy to spot trades, and that's just the way it is sometimes. Yesterday we didn't get a whole lot of volume. Today we get the volume, but we still don't really get many setups. So you get days like this, unfortunately. I mean, there's plenty of trades here to find and to make your money, but you had to be patient early on, unless you took one of these more aggressive ones, because you really didn't get your first good trade to around 9:30. And then after about 11:30, you didn't get another one till almost 2 o'clock. The day's almost over. So it took well, actually there's one down here on this short. But it's just one of those days where the trading's a little more difficult. So it happens. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow and wrap up our week tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.